Middays here on SuperTalk. Dave Hughes here, and before we get to our guest, just very quickly, I was telling Rhino about this during the break. The GFS model, just to put this on your radar before it shows up on your radar, the GFS model is showing that a tropical storm is going to develop just to the west of Cuba next Wednesday. That's the prediction. So, Ira, I am so sorry to lead you in with that kind of news, but I wanted to get that out there very quick. Ira Mehlman joins us with the Federation for American Immigration Reform. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Good afternoon.
Well, let me ask you this question. We'll just start with this. How do we fix this? We'll just go with that.
How do we fix it? We have to show the resolve to enforce our immigration laws, to make it clear to people all around the world that we are not going to allow them to take advantage of our laws, take advantage of our humanitarian policies. We need to have an immigration policy. We need to have humanitarian protection for people who truly need it. But we cannot afford to allow the kind of massive abuse that has not only gone on under this current administration, but is actually being encouraged by the administration. And, there's been a lot of talk recently, especially from the White House, about the so-called bipartisan Senate bill that went down to defeat twice. It was not bipartisan at all. It was a terrible bill, which is why it didn't get any support. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It had to do with the fact that that bill would have done nothing to correct all the problems that exist now within our immigration policy. The House actually did pass a really good bill a year ago in May of 2023 that would systematically eliminate all of the incentives for people to come to the United States illegally. And eliminating the incentives, discouraging people from making the attempt in the first place, is the most effective and humane and cost-effective way of enforcing our immigration laws. And H.R. 2, it's been out there now, sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk, waiting to be brought up in the Senate. He's not going to do it, obviously. But that is the sort of legislation that is needed. But it's not going to happen because the Democrats in the Senate don't want to do it. And obviously, President Biden doesn't want to have it sent to his desk either.
Now, let me ask you this. What change do you see depending on the outcome of the election in November? Whether we have another 4 years of this or we have President Trump again? Let's go with the first option. Let's say we've got 4 more years of Biden. Are we going to see any difference in their approach to this, or is it actually going to get worse, do you think?
It's hard to know. I mean, certainly the expectation is that it would be more of the same. And since he would not be facing re-election ever again, I guess he would feel free to do whatever he wants. Look, they are well aware in the White House that the policies that this administration has been carrying out on immigration are not popular with the voters. They can read the polls as well as you and I can. What they have been doing over the past 3.5 years is pandering to the far left wing of the president's party. It's a political calculation here. He understands that he needs to get those far left voters out on election day if he hopes to win. And hopefully, from their perspective, not to alienate voters in the center. So it's a game of political calculations here. We'll find out how well it works in November. But once the election is behind us, obviously you will have, in either case, you will have a lame duck president who will not have to worry about facing the voters again.
Well, and I'm going to be honest, we had the executive action, the executive order that Biden signed this week, putting the limit, I think, once it hits 2,500 asylum request entries per day, they limit it, they shut it down. If that was a political calculation, they are really bad at math right now in the Biden administration, because so far the effect has been to tick off the far left, make the far right immediately come out and say this is not nearly enough and get them upset. And then the people in the middle are just kind of looking at it going, yeah, and it doesn't seem like there was any benefit to them out of doing that, or for anyone else for that matter. Why did they even do that?
They did it because they had to demonstrate, or at least pretend to demonstrate to the American public, that they were taking this issue seriously. And again, I mean, it is all subterfuge. As you point out, it still allows 2,500 people a day to violate our laws. They're actually saying it's okay for 2,500 people a day to violate our laws, which is kind of ridiculous. But then there are so many exceptions to the enforcement provisions here. Minors will not be included in that total. The people who come in and say they've been trafficked or they suffered extreme trauma, all sorts of exceptions to the rule. It also only applies to people who are encountered by the Border Patrol. They encounter about 60% of the people trying to get into the United States illegally. There's 40% that are encountered by other agencies, most notably the Office of Field Operations. Those don't count against the cap of 2,500 a day. Then on top of that, you have the administration's parole programs. They're all patently illegal, by the way, but they have been paroling, as Secretary Mayorkas just said the other day, at least 1 million people into the United States, illegal aliens. 1 million illegal aliens have been paroled into the United States over the past year. That is going to continue. So, if you do the math, in spite of what the president was saying the other day, we're still going to be allowing 1.8 million people at the minimum to violate our laws every year. So that is not enforcement. That's just simply an attempt to make it less visible to the American public. It looks bad on TV to see people coming across the Rio Grande or streaming across the desert in Arizona. It's less obvious when they come through ports of entry, when you fly them into the country. That they intend to continue, and the effect in the country is still going to be the same. It's still going to have the same impact on our schools, on our cities, on all the things that the American public cares about.
Well, and we just had a situation here in Mississippi, up in Tunica, where there was a push to locate a center to house some of these minors that are in the country illegally. The Board of Supervisors there voted against the proposal and decided not to do that, which I think was a good decision. But the problem that we have now is we've got so many of them. What do? How do we cleanse this out? And I want your opinion on what these days especially is going to be a radical idea. I realize that. But if your house is flooding, you've got pipes that are busted in the walls somewhere, there's water getting everywhere, you don't try to figure out a way to mitigate it. You turn the water off for a little bit until you can fix the breaks. Do you ever think there would be a stomach from anybody on either side to, with a very limited time scope, say, 6 months, just close the border completely until we can straighten it out?
Yeah, the law says the president has the authority to shut down that border anytime he determines that what is going on is detrimental to the interests of the United States. And, I think if you did a poll of the American public, by an overwhelming majority, people would say what is going on is detrimental to countless interests here in the United States. So the president has the authority. This president has the authority. He's had it since January 20th, 2021. He has chosen not to use it. In fact, he has chosen to undermine it in every way that he possibly could. So, yeah, we could do that, and we should certainly close down the border to illegal immigration. There's no reason why we should be tolerating illegal activity, much less rewarding it. So, yes, I mean, the first thing you do is you stop the influx. Then you start to figure out all the ways that we can deal with the people who are already here. Probably about 7 million people have gotten into the country illegally under President Biden. That's a lot of people. As you point out, they are imposing all kinds of burdens on local communities from Mississippi to New York City to California. Everywhere you go, you have local communities that are just reeling under the impact. Look, we didn't get into this problem overnight. There's no magic solution. It's not going to be fixed in the first 5 minutes of any administration, but you have to start the process, and the best place to start is by stopping it from getting worse.
Well, and we have, I feel confident in saying that we have proven we don't know right now how to do that. We just don't know how to start. We keep making efforts, and this is all laid at the feet of the Biden administration, like the executive order. They keep making efforts to show, oh, look, we're doing something about it. I promise. And no, No. When you get down to effects, one of my things I talk about all the time on the air is we have to quit focusing on process and start focusing on results. That was a process executive order that's not going to give the results that's going to solve the problem, and that's what we need to focus on. Can you hang around through the break?
Sure.
Talking with Ira Mehlman with the Federation for American Immigration Reform. This another one that should be one of the top topics, especially during an election year, because this is hugely impactful and important. We will continue talking to Ira when we come back on SuperTalk Mississippi live in the Element Wealth Studio. Rhino setting us up with the bumper music, Ira, as Pink Floyd's The Wall plays us in. Talking with Ira Mehlman, the media director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform. What about the wall? You know, that was a staple of the Trump administration that was talked about on a very regular basis. They got work done on it. And then when President Biden took over, they said, we're not going to do it. And then a year or two later, they kind of quietly started putting some sections back up, didn't they? I think just to quieten some people down.
Yes, they did. They put a few sections, but for the most part, they have canceled it. You have billions of dollars of the American taxpayers' money that's already been spent, and the material is just sitting there rusting. It's not being used. I mean, aside from everything else, it's just a huge waste of the taxpayers' money that the administration has incurred. So, yeah, I mean, the wall is effective. It is not going to solve the problem all by itself. Obviously, you need other policies. You need policies that discourage people from attempting to come to the United States illegally in the first place. But the wall is an effective impediment. And by the way, while the Biden administration has halted construction on the wall, Texas, which has obviously the longest border with Mexico, is building its own sections of wall. We were down there a few months ago, and you can see where the state of Texas is putting up its own wall. And we've seen the combination of the wall that Texas is building and state policies that discourage illegal migration has effectively diminished the number of people coming across in Texas. Now, it's been made up because people have gone to Arizona and to California, where you have governors who are less interested in securing the border. But Texas has demonstrated that a wall and rational policies do have an impact. Again, it's not going to solve the problem entirely. There is no perfect solution. We're never going to have zero, but we don't have to have the kind of chaos that we have endured over the past 3.5 years.
And that's exactly what it's been. And it's going to take drastic action at this point, I think, to move the needle, because just kind of waving your hand at it and going, well, I paid attention to it, that's not going to do anything, because the problem has grown so severe. Let me get your opinion on a statement, because I have a couple of friends of mine who immigrated, who went through the process legally. They are legally citizens of the United States. Good people. And I've heard them talk about, their process that they went through. It should be hard to come into America. Is that a fair statement?
It is. And by the way, my wife is one of those people. We
Perfect.
went through that process. We went through that process years ago, and it wasn't easy. I mean, there was a lot of checking done. You had to go through interviews. You had to have health screenings, and it wasn't cheap either. You can do it by yourself, but you're far better off paying an immigration attorney to help you through it. So there should be a process. And look, the people who have done it the right way, the people who have applied and waited in line, done all the things that they're supposed to be doing, essentially we're making chumps out of them. We're saying to them, you went through all this waiting, the expense and everything else. You could have just walked into the country and made some bogus claim of asylum, and they would have let you right into the United States. So, the integrity of the process is also at stake here. And again, I mean, what we're seeing now is a manifestation of the lack of respect that we show to our own laws. If we don't respect our own laws, why should we expect people around the world to honor them?
Well, and I think you bring up a great point talking about making chumps out of the people that go through the process legally, because while it is challenging, it is difficult, it is also doable. People do it all the time. it just shouldn't be a free-for-all. If you are able to walk or be dragged across the border, well, welcome to the country. That just seems a little bit loose to me. I think it also shows a lack of respect for American citizens in general when you have this attitude towards the border.
Yes, we sometimes forget that immigration is a public policy. The primary stakeholders in U.S. immigration policy are us, the American people. It is our policy. It is supposed to serve and protect the interests of the United States. And immigration can do that if it is managed correctly. If we bring in people who are willing to assimilate into the mainstream of the American public, who come with the skills that are necessary to succeed here, it does improve for everybody. But what we have now is a system that makes absolutely no sense. It is just anybody who shows up here practically now is allowed into the country. We have allowed terrorists into the country. The administration has released people who are on the terror watch list. We see on a daily basis. For the second time, there were New York City police officers who were assaulted, including shot the other day, by people who were members of Venezuelan gangs who came into the country. So, this is what is going on, and it's having real-life repercussions all across the country.
Well, something else I just want to pull out of what you just said, because think of the United States as a company. There's a hiring process before you get to become a part of that company. They're looking for people that can help the company grow and prosper and get better and be more effective and be more successful. They're not looking for anybody that can figure out how to work the doorknob and wander in off the street. That's kind of the immigration policy right now, though, isn't it?
It is. If you come to the border, if you make a bogus claim of asylum, they will let you in. The president's executive order essentially does the same thing. It just makes it less visible to the American people. But essentially, we're still getting lots of people who just show up here. We don't get to select who comes to the United States. The people who show up decide who comes to the United States. That's not how it should work. You use the analogy of a company. It's like college admissions. You don't just walk into a college and say, "Here I am." You don't sit down in the classroom, and then expect the teacher to grade your paper. It doesn't work that way, and it shouldn't work that way when it comes to our immigration policy.
Well, you want to audit a few classes, fine. We have a green card process, too. There's a process for all of this, no matter which way you look at it. And we seem to have taken that process, wadded it up, thrown it over our shoulder, and said, everybody come on in, have a wonderful time. No, that is a recipe for disaster. And we're seeing that play out. We continue to see that play out and get worse. Is there anything we can do before January 20th? Or is there anything, let me rephrase that, is there anything that is likely to be done to fix this before January 20th?
Well, the Republicans have, talked a good game over the past couple of years. But when it comes to really doing it, they did give them credit. They passed the H.R. 2 in the House. And then they promised that if Chuck Schumer wasn't going to bring it up on the floor of the Senate, they would either get it into the federal budget bill or they would get it into the foreign aid package. They have repeatedly said that they were going to do this and didn't do it. We have the 2025 budget process coming up between now and October 1st. They have one last opportunity to say, if you want to get this budget done, we're putting H.R. 2 in there. You can vote it up or down. If you want to vote it down, then you have to explain to the American public why you don't want to institute all of these reforms that the American public supports by huge margins. So, yes, there are opportunities. I wouldn't bet the mortgage money on it happening, but there are opportunities if they want to make it happen.
Well, this is one of those cases where, to me, the correct response to all of this is somebody has to do something. And the problem is we need to hold the people in Washington accountable if they don't. That's my opinion.
Yes, they work for us. It's our immigration policy. And, all you have to do is look at the polls. The American public aren't happy with what they're seeing.
Yes, and instead of squabbling and running all of our blood pressures up, let's just fix it. That's my thought, but then I'm a simple guy. You probably figured that out already, Ira. Just close it all off. Let's mop up the floor, and then we can open it back up. But that's too commonsensical, I think, for it to actually fly. Any final thoughts before we get out of here? About to let you get back to your actual life, Ira.
Yeah, again, this, just to remind people, it's our policy. The people who make these policies, the folks in Washington, D.C., they work for us. I think we're beginning to see, the polls show that this is the number one issue on the minds of voters. Just keep up the pressure. We, the American people, have to keep up the pressure, because without that, the special interests will prevail.
Yes. Law-abiding, regular people, got no problem with them coming here. Go through the process. We have a process for a reason. That's all you have to do. And then welcome. Come on in. Good to have you once you complete the process. It's just that simple. Ira Mehlman with the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Enjoyed talking to you, my friend. Let's do this again.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thanks.
We will continue on a Thursday morning in the Element Wealth Studios on middays right after this.